Hello. Welcome to LoFi Bedtime Very Tales. I hope that you are thinking and feeling and behaving well. In this episode, I will tell you the tale of the Homeroom Hero. His name is Butch, and he is all about trying to help his fellow classmates learn more about each other so that they can feel better about who they are and about their friendships. Not really such a bad thing. The more that we learn about each other, the more we may learn about ourselves. So I hope you enjoy listening to this story. And always, please, remember to do things today to make tomorrow better. And now, Homeroom Hero. There is a school where children learn things. It is not much different than many other schools. There is a floor that you can get dirty from your shoes, windows to look out of instead of looking at what your teacher is teaching you, and desks that support the things that help you learn and the now flavorless gum below. This particular academic institution has enabled many younger academics in learning the ideas and constructs that these instructees then take with them forever. There are a few rules to life. One is that once you are taught something, you then know it forever. Kind of like once you were made aware that water will make almost everything wet, you've known that forever after. So, if you are even mildly curious or intensely invested in an answer, superhydrophobic materials repel 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, or H2O as some like to state. One other interesting piece of information is that there is one other thing that will never get wet, and that is our reflection in a body of water. But it is time to return to our story, so we must not reflect upon that possibly mind-altering observation. All schools have classrooms and bathrooms, of course, and most of these centers for learning have homeroom time every day or something like it. It is a time and a place where students and teachers can get it together or become grounded or prepared or nervous for the day of tasks that is ahead of them. Some homerooms have green and white tiles on the floor, while others smell like cinnamon and brown sugar. There are always pupils and at least one instructor. Sometimes the learners can look green because they don't like the smell of cinnamon, and the educator needs to drink tea that does not smell like cinnamon or brown sugar. Perhaps green tea may put an end to all of this nonsense. Homeroom is a place where you can see who is ready for the day and see who will certainly require some assistance to get things going, and maybe continued adjustments to their day so they can remain on task. In this particular classroom's homeroom time, there were multiple classmates, and there was one who began to think about others just as much as he thought about himself. Specifically, he speculated about the feelings they may be experiencing, for he was not necessarily living a life similar to theirs. He was named after a family member from years and years ago. The kind of handle that you'd assume he wore a tweed 3-piece suit with a monocle and had a handlebar mustache that required constant grooming. Good thing that none of that was true. He would look a bit out of place in 3rd grade. I'll let you create what you think his real name was, but everyone called him Butch. He was a considerate and thoughtful person who unfailingly informed his parents when his toothpaste tube was on the verge of empty. So far, he was the only child in his family. So far. But that's another story. His mom was quite the goofball, intended to create exclamation points and question marks with his huckleberry syrup on his fan cakes. These were pancakes that looked like a four-bladed fan, but did not taste like any fans that I have sampled for flavor. He once caught her squirting it out of the container straight into her mouth. He snickered out with, "I guess some people have no patience." He then begged with, "My turn, me. His pop walked into the kitchen and declared, "Looks like a couple of animals that found their way into my house. Unless I get my purple nectar next, I'm going to have to call the zookeeper." They all laughed at how silly they could be with one another, while the family cat, Ned, kept his focus on a squirrel taunting him from a branch outside. Ned knew it was all a game with the squirrel, and still he persisted because, well, he's a cat. Back to class we go. Butch's classmates were somewhere around 22 on any given day. Sometimes kids would be homesick or have to go to the dentist. Some of the children's ancestors were from many different parts of the globe. Some students were even and actually and seriously born in different countries. With this information being known, it reasons to communicate that not all the kids believed in the same things as others. Some pupils had no clue what Valentine's Day was, but they liked celebrating it anyway. I mean, who doesn't like candy shaped like a heart? Even sweeter yet, don't get me started on shades of pink and red. Some learners did not celebrate their birthdays like others because in their family tradition, it was not such a big deal for someone to turn 8 years old. Now, someone turning 88 years old would bring out the whole family and anyone else. The other main distinctive difference was participating in show and tell. Some children wanted to present and talk about their latest gift or big vacation, while others were not so fortunate to have these things. So it was the school's policy to no longer engage in this activity. It had been that way for some time now, and it fell into the category of too bad, because some of the pupils never really learned about one another now. The children were still friends, and the teacher educated all of them about the different cultures in the classroom. But it just wasn't the same to not hear it from the kiddaroonies themselves. Butch was cool with almost everybody. Cool in the way that you knew he would be wearing a jean jacket by the time he was 12. Millie was the holdout to his friendship, and he could never figure out why. I'll tell you, because you've been so patient and respect the relationship of Ned and the taunting squirrel and the plight of the purple potatoes. Whoops, that's for another time, too. It happened on a Thursday afternoon during recess. It had rained the night before, and the ground was still damp and a bit muddy in spots. All the children are running around as if someone had promised them chocolate if they ran in no particular direction and at random rates of acceleration. It was a minor miracle that no one ran smack slap into one another. Did I mention the hollering and glee as well? It was unbridled bedlam, or just your typical recess period. Millie had tried to outrun Anya, but instead she slipped in the grass and scooted across it and secured a stain across the bottom of her tangerine orange, navy blue, and forest green argyle skirt. She was initially embarrassed, which transformed into ashamed, and then she flew into anger. It did not look respectable and had obvious implications of an alternative accident that no one finds desirable or acceptable. And then she heard Butch giggling like the laughs were burping out of his body at her bad fortune. He wasn't, you know. That rascal Bayo had spontaneously yelled, Booger. And that was all Butch needed to hear. Butch never knew about Millie's soiled clothes, but she believed he did. Sad how that happened. Sometimes people misinterpret things and it gets worse when these things are never corrected. So please, always try to communicate exactly what you mean. And if there's any doubt about, please try to understand exactly what someone else is saying before moving on to the meadow of misunderstanding and the prairie of presumption. Butch's parents tried to help him understand other circumstances, even when it may be as hard to get as the rainbow that the unicorn makes. You know that rainbow, right? Smells like cotton candy. Raspberry cotton candy. Anyhow, Butch tried to emulate his parents, and it could lead to some interestingly awkward questions. There was one new classmate, Carlos, who seemed to wear the same 3 shirts throughout the week. He always wore the same blue jeans and shoes, and his socks were always white to the eyes. After a few weeks of school, some of the other students began to gossip that Carlos's family was poor. There's nothing wrong with not being wealthy, and it certainly wasn't his responsibility to make money for his family. While it is definitely common for people to aspire to solve any question, the issue was the negative tone his classmates used when they assumed this. Butch, being he and no one else, complimented Carlos on his shirts. Carlos thanked him for the kind words. He then informed Butch that he likes to wear these shirts to school because most of his shirts at home are very formal and he doesn't like to feel dressed up at school. Carlos averred that school is for learning and frolic, but not for flashing fashion. Butch replied that he thought that made sense. Later, at recess, he and Carlos began to foot race one another. Carlos won 7 out of 9. And in the If It Matters department, Butch never told the other students about Carlos's wardrobe selection. He deduced that they would eventually figure it out for themselves. The following week, another new pupil to the school this year named Dana was having a sad week. The teacher spoke with her outside of the classroom a few times and always smiled at her when she called Dana's name during roll call. Dana seemed really friendly and no one was a stinker towards her. Butch asked Carlos and Anya what they thought was going on with Dana. Carlos offered to invite her to eat lunch with them. They were planning on sitting near the sand traps because they were going to see who could write the alphabet the fastest in the sand with a stick. They had to make their time in the sand traps productive and couldn't fill their pockets with sand again and then sit on the rug in class again. Dana waved when Carlos walked up to her and then nodded her head up and down. She did not go left to right, so you know she agreed, which is a yay kind of situation. As they each watched one another eat their packed lunches, they began to speak about what they liked to do outside and the interestingly curious things about their families. Dana told them that she really missed her old school and her old town. She could call and speak with some friends once a week, but it had not been easy. She liked things about where she lived, and she cannot do those things here. The town they lived in was in a rainforest, and she used to live near many glorious ponds. She liked swimming and just being there. It was really green there with all the grass, trees, bushes, and other plants. Anya reassured her that there were a lot of plants where they live now, but they were just different. Anya had visited family near Dana's old town, and she told Dana that she really liked it there too. That comforted Dana, and she felt better. She didn't feel so alone with her memories of her old home. Then the alphabet stick sand trap spell-off started. Anya came in first, Dana second, and Carlos was third. Butch, well, he was distracted with his thoughts. He had an idea. The kind of idea that will take up the majority of the rest of this here tale. So I'd suggest that you stick around. Get it? Stick, as in sand trap, A to the Z, around. Later that day, when Butch was picked up by his pop during aftercare, he told his pop his brainstorm. His pop, initially taken aback with pride for how compassionate his son was, began telling Butch how much he takes after his mom and all of his grandparents, too. At the next red light, he had Butch take his phone. "You silly, Butch is too young to have his own phone. He doesn't have one." Butch called his mom on his pop's phone and asked her what takeout food she wanted for dinner. Butch was not surprised when his mom said, "Honey, you decide." Butch's pop overheard the exchange and asked, "Thin, regular, or deep dish?" Butch grinned and provided, "Let's go deep, Pop. I'm feeling extra saucy tonight." And while the pizza feast was had, Butch explained his concept of comedy. He was extra amped with the play on words he had for it. Patience, please. You'll know it soon enough. His parents pondered, kicked some thoughts around like a ball, and considered how Butch would broach his attempt for advancement of all-around amity. Perhaps proposing a parlay over pistachio parfaits without delay may be more than just okay. His parents emailed the homeroom teacher with all the detailed information. The email was triple check for grammar, and the deliberation over the final font is a story in itself. You really want to know what the instructor's name is, don't you? The name is whatever you desire it to be. Miss Jolly Feet? Mr. Tired Watch? Mrs. Blessing Gown? Why not? A response was received within 11 minutes. It was just enough time for Butch to tell Ned to get off of his pillow and to floss and then brush his teeth. That's the correct order, you know. You don't put your shoes on and then your socks on, right? Mom was asked to read the contents of the reply. It began with a Y and ended in an S. Guess the vowel in between. The teacher requested a short meeting before homeroom. Butch's parents were able to accommodate their schedules in order to complete this. They all met and discovered that their teacher preferred Earl Grey tea. Pop made a mental note for the year-end thank you gift for the teacher. They all went through the "why did you come up with this" to the "how did you come up with this" to the yay that you came up with this. The teacher informed Butch that he could tell the homeroom about his magnanimous motion. He was truly stoked and was leaning forward in his chair in anticipation of everyone looking at him and smiling. And then he remembered something, someone. The educator started typing and then printed out a piece of paper for Butch to read. Arial was the font. Size was 12 with the title in bold and being size 16. The title was Know Us Well. Right after roll call, the teacher announced that there would be a new activity that would take place each week that they were in school. The learners would have no short assignment today. Instead, the rules around the new policy would be read to them by Dana. Some of the students lost their breath a bit, and Arnie may have broken wind. Dana was soon in front of the class and began to recite the guidelines of the new exercise. Dana was an excellent reader and an even wonderfuler speaker. Wonderfuler is a word. I didn't make it up. I really wish I made it up, though. After Dana finished delivering the directions, everyone in the class clapped like seals at breakfast. No one barked. These were children, not aquatic mammals of the wet wild. This new activity became a school tradition because it didn't separate the students. It wasn't until they were all promoted to junior high that the kids all learned it came from the munificent mind of a boy nicknamed Butch. I'll never tell you his real name. I've decided to list the guidelines of the activity below. And no, Butch and Dana never dated or anything like that, but she always seemed to have an extra super sour cherry bomb for him. I will now start reading the guidelines for Know Us Well. Number 1. Every student on the week of their birthday will get 10 minutes to tell the class about themselves, and will then have 20 minutes to take questions from everyone else. Students with summer and holiday break birthdays will be worked in alphabetically by the first vowel in their last name. The principal, the teacher, and other staff at the school participated in Know Us Well, too. When the children learned that the lunch lady's uncle was actually the lawn maintenance man, they all cheered, "Huzzah!" for they thought that they looked like one another. Number 2. The pupils will be expected to talk about the things they like, the people in their family and friends, what they'd like to do as an adult, and why, if they thought Bigfoot is real, and what they would tell him if they were stuck on a Ferris wheel together, and what kinds of foods they think may taste better when they are older. This information is to help the youngsters better understand one another's situations, like what it must be like for Arnie to have triplets, little sisters who sneak mac and cheese into his shoes. Number 3. The questions have to be mostly serious, but can be silly, like, do you think the color pink would just become red if it sat at the beach for a long time? Or, if the wind had owned a car, do you think it would ever roll the windows down? Or, are half the seeds of purple potatoes blue and the other half red? It is requested that students have their questions prepared in advance so that they can really come up with insightful and inane ones. Number 4, and above all, remember to get to know each other while we can. Our shared experience will only help us later in life. We are only better together. And finally, number 5. It is customary to offer super sour cherry bombs to the students speaking, as they are reported to be the best candy ever confected. My polite reader or listener, I hope that you are able to recognize that the more we can learn about one another, the more we see that we have more in common than we may realize. I think that the sooner we discover how to ask any kind of question, this will enable us to have better conversations with people, too. Better conversations lead to better friendships, and those lead to better lives. And isn't that what we all want to have? Better lives, better friendships? I think so. And I know that Butch thinks that too. And I wish the best for you.